Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 135 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. So if you were lucky enough to be living in Japan in June of 2011, and you went to go ahead and see the Super Sentai 199 movie, upon your ticket purchase you were handed a pamphlet. Now, to the best of my knowledge, this pamphlet contained information of events prior to the movie to catch everybody up on what this movie was going to be about and the things that they missed out on. It is my understanding that this pamphlet basically explained the first 34 years of Sentai and a little bit of the Gokaiger series prior to the film, because I believe this came in before the 12th episode, somewhere around that time within, the first quarter of the series. Now, the validity of what is in this pamphlet, I'm not going to go ahead and say is gospel, because I asked on Ranger Board to actually get a copy of this pamphlet. I got a partial scan that was not translated, but supposedly people have translated it, but I can't get any real verification on that. At least verification that I'm not comfortable with. Specifically, a full page for page scan with direct English translations. I have not been able to go ahead and find that. So if something I'm saying is contradictory to what is in the pamphlet, or if you're Japanese and you absolutely know that's not true and you have the pamphlet, please correct me on that. Let me know. And if you do have the pamphlet, I would love for somebody to upload that online for us to go ahead and take a look at it. Nevertheless, most of my information I'm getting is from links I've received over at the Ranger Board thread, and primarily over at Ranger Wiki and their Great Legend War page. So I just want to start with that as we go along here. But basically, this pamphlet was to go ahead and get you up to date on what was going on in the show. One of the more interesting things that this pamphlet talks about is that prior to the opening of the film, and consequently the first episode of Gokaiger, when the Zanyak actually attacked the Earth, there was a massive battle between all the Zords that were available to the Sentai from Go Ranger up to Gokaiger, and in that battle, most of the Zords were destroyed or damaged. Interesting, isn't it? Now, I see there are actually a couple of reasons for why they did this as far as a narrative is concerned. One, the film opens up with the Gokaiger actually having been defeated in their own Zords. We see Gosei Great is actually damaged, but eventually will be repaired later in the film, and Gosei Ultimate is actually in pieces on the ground. Now, whether this scene is actually taken from this great battle, which is called the Mecha Purge, so tells me that a lot of them are gone at this point. Whether this was actually from that battle or from a later battle that the Gokaiger were only involved in, I'm not quite sure, because the film actually treats it like when they meet Aka Ranger and Big One in the forest, that is the first time that they've ever met the Sentai, even to the fact where Aka Ranger has to ask if they are the Gokaiger. So there's a little bit of question about the timeline there. Nevertheless, this Mecha Purge serves two purposes as far as the narrative. So at the beginning of the film, we assume that all the Zords have been destroyed or damaged. And of course, the reason that Aka Ranger sacrifices their powers to defeat the fleet is because, well, heck, we don't have any other Zords. What are we supposed to go ahead and do at this point? We've seen this a number of times in Sentai where the Zords are not available, or they've tried the Zords and they've been destroyed, and the Rangers are at their weakest or most vulnerable point. Green with Evil is a good example, where Green Ranger, Scorpion, and Zordon have defeated the Megazord. They have no Zords left, so how are they going to defeat the Dragon Zord in Part 5? We see it in Chase in the Space when the Rescue Megazord and Turbo Megazord are damaged and destroyed, and the Turbo Rangers have no defense for the power chamber when the Piranhatrons assault. So basically, narratively speaking, all the Super Sentai are at their lowest point. Yes, they are united and they have their powers now, but they have no Zords, and they're going up against massive fleet of spaceships and foot soldiers. So for Aka Ranger to even bring up the idea of sacrificing their powers, well, that makes a lot of sense given that context. Further, later in the story, when Gosei Great and Gokaiger are battling against Black Cross, well, those are the only Zords that they have. As the film actually establishes, Gosei Ultimate is destroyed, and they seem to only have this plus a couple of headers. So how are they going to defeat him and his massive army? Well, they got to call on the other Zords. But since most of them are destroyed or damaged, they can't do that. And through a contrivance of the wish of the people of the planet, we get the first 35 robots from the series. Although only Gosei, Gray, and Gokaiger are actually there. The others are magic of some sort. I'm not quite sure about it. The film doesn't do a very good job of explaining that, although I'm sure it's probably somewhere in the pamphlet. Nevertheless, it's an interesting concept here. It works well into the film and explaining why they don't use the Zords to fight at the end of the film and why they sacrifice their powers. Because if you don't have them, then that's all you can go ahead and really do within the film. And of course, later on, it does talk about such as the power animals. When they actually go to the animarium and they find Gallalion, it is suspicious that Gallalion is the only one there when you have over 100 power animals, and I would say a good fifth of them, I think is what it is actually on the animarium. So the implication is the reason that the Gokaiger did not run into more power animals is that they were destroyed in this battle. And of course, why Datus doesn't appear to the Gokaiger in the film is that he may have been damaged or destroyed. And of course, we get into the whole thing about Ninja Man, that of course he wasn't there. But there's the implication that the three god generals are still alive at some point. Nevertheless, here's what I want to get into with the Mecha Purge, because again, it works well narratively, but the issue I take with it is that's something I think we should have seen. That we as the audience should have seen this play out. Now, I made a criticism against Jungle Fury in my response to Linkara's History of Power Rangers video. Nothing against Linkara, but against Jungle Fury itself. And the problem I had with Jungle Fury, or one of the many issues I had with Jungle Fury, is that we were focusing on characters and events that were, frankly, not all that interesting. Specifically, we were focusing on Casey, Leo, and Theo. They were the three characters. Even in Dom later in the series, I just didn't find them all that interesting. What I did find interesting were the Masters. Master Mao, Master Swoop, Master Fant, Master Finn, and later on, Master Ro, Master Lope, and Master Gwyn. I thought those were more interesting characters. They were people I wanted to know more about, and I wanted to go ahead and see adventures starring them. That's something that I wanted. But for whatever reason, the series thought it was more interesting to focus on these three cubs. I mean, one of them's a cub, but three students from the school who have to save Kung Fu. I mean, it's the plot of Kung Fu Panda 2, I think. The point is, we were focusing on something that was not interesting, but what was interesting, we didn't get to see. We didn't really get to go ahead and explore. Because I would love to have seen, how Master Mao gained his powers, how the three Spirit Masters ended up in the Spirit Realm, how Master Fant, basically became a recluse, how Master Swoop, became blind, and how Master Finn raised RJ and what their relationship was really like. That's the kind of stuff I wanted to go ahead and know, but we didn't get. The same thing about the Mecha Purge. That's something that, one, I think we should have seen, and two, should have been referenced in the series. I mean, does anybody else find it to be a problem when you go into a movie and the movie doesn't provide you with all the information and they have to give you a pamphlet to explain, I'm sorry, it's not in the movie, but here's what happened? I mean, it's like going into, say you go into the new Star Wars movie, Episode 7, that's coming out next month. And, there are going to be people who go into that movie who've never seen the first 6 films. I don't know why you would go see Episode 7 if you didn't see Episodes 1 through 6. I mean, that's confusing to say the least. But imagine you went to the movie and they gave you a pamphlet, and somewhere in the 30-year period between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, there was this massive rebellion, battle, whatever crazy thing that happened that involved 5,000 starships and the third Death Star and whatever and stuff. And when you actually get to the film, they make slight reference, oh yeah, there was that big battle we had, 20 years ago or something like that. But you don't actually see it, it's just in the pamphlet. Don't you feel like you'd be screwed out of something there? That they talk about this great epic battle that, everybody else, it was so amazing, you should have been there. But in the pamphlet is all you get. You just get a brief paragraph. Oh, and by the way, the third Death Star attacked and 5,000 ships were involved and Han Solo, yada, yada, yada. I mean, you would feel really cheated if you got that, right? And frankly, the fact that this is not something we got to go ahead and see does make me feel cheated a little bit. I mean, one of the things as a child that I always wanted to see is I always wanted to see a massive Zord battle. I mean, look at what we've gotten Power Rangers in the last 20 some years. I don't think we've ever gotten more than maybe 4 or 5 Megazords on screen at a single time, and typically those Megazords are just within the series themselves. Megazords relegated to just our Ranger characters. But never have we actually gotten this show where we got to see all the Megazords from Mighty Morphin to Dino Charge all battling together in this massive battle. Isn't that something that you'd want to go ahead and see? Isn't that something we've all wanted? And the thing is, we do get this in the Sentai 199 movie to an extent, because again, we get the 35 robots, and that is, I believe, the largest Zord battle we have ever seen. Although the way it's done leaves something to be desired because, well, as you can tell, not all of them are actually there. Some of are CG'd in, some use old footage, which is lazy editing in my opinion. Nevertheless, we don't get to see them all actually battle. So what was the point of even telling us this? You know, I mean, we could infer if we had this battle in the movie that they don't have their Zords, they use their Zords, or they didn't think about using their Zords, or even that scene with the Gosei Great being damaged, we could imagine what happened. But you're basically telling us in the pamphlet, yeah, we did go ahead and have this great battle that they did participate in, but we're not going to show it to you. I mean, it's like dangling, some money in front of somebody. Like, you want it? Oh, can't get it. Oh, can't reach it. Can't reach it. They have something awesome there that they're not going to go ahead and give to us, that they're not going to go ahead and show us. And as we can see, it is integral to what is happening later in the series. As I said about the power animals, if this is true and all the other power animals are defeated, then that would go a long way to explain why the Gal Lion does what it does, why the Gal Lion is by itself. It might even be able to explain why the Gal Lion has physically changed. Maybe it absorbed the powers of its fallen comrades, or it poke-evolved into something. I don't know. There has to be some sort of explanation there, and there is, but we're not privy to it. We don't get to go ahead and see it. And I just think it's a massive cheat that we have such a great concept as over 100 Zords fighting in a battle, but we don't get to go ahead and see it. Now, you can probably argue, oh, they didn't have the budget, whatever, and stuff like that. I'm like, this is Super Sentai. You have the budget. You have the means of doing it. It's just a question of, will you do it or not? Now, was this something that they did plan in production? Like, we are going to open the movie with this giant robot battle, and they had to cut it at the end? Because if that's the case, I'd like to see the cut footage. Is there cut footage out there? What do the producers have to go ahead and say about that? And again, it's something I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's like, again, we're being teased into this. I don't understand why that is. Not to mention, I'd like to know what Zords would have actually been available in that battle, because again, in Power Rangers, we have number of Zords that were destroyed by the end of their respected series or later series. We know in Power Rangers Turbo, we can never see the Rescue Megazord show up later in series unless it is rebuilt because it was destroyed in Chase in Space. The Astro Megazord was destroyed in Journeys In. We know that the Life Force Megazord and the Omega Megazord were destroyed in their series finale. So actually, it would make sense that a lot of them would not go ahead and show up. Now, how many of them in Super Sentai were destroyed at the end, I don't know, because again, I haven't seen all of Super Sentai to know that information. Nevertheless, it just seems to me that the one thing you would want to go ahead and show in the movie that you would have with the budget of a movie is a giant robot fight. I mean, at least when you get space movies, you get giant fights with hundreds of ships and everything. I mean, again, going back to Star Wars here with Episode 7 and everything. A New Hope, you had, what was it, 30 Rebel ships, a couple of TIE Fighters, and Death Star. That was the extent of your epic battle. And then by the time you get to Return of the Jedi, you have over 100 ships, I think a few dozen Star Destroyers and thousands of TIE Fighters, and then you got the Death Star and everything. You escalate it. You actually get to show more because there's more going on. And of course, by the time we get to Episode 3, then we get that massive battle over Coruscant. And isn't that, I mean, say what you will about the prequels and everything, but I think everybody wants these massive space battles in films. I mean, that's what people want. I mean, yes, it's going to detract from the overall story they're going to go ahead and tell, but here's the thing, is that with the opening of the 199 movie, a lot of it is reused footage that we already saw in the first episode of Gokaiger. Yes, there are some extended scenes, and they had to edit in some of the Shinkanger and the Goanger because they were integral to the they weren't integral to the plot, but their actors appear in there, so we had to physically actually show them, for about at least a 10-second period. So why give us reused footage of stuff we already saw instead of, I don't know, doing a new Zord battle, something we did not see, something to entice us with? Because, of course, entice us with, I mean, the movie ultimately is the Gokaiger versus Gokaiger movie. That is what it is at its core. It just happens to take place during all these different events. We got the prologue to the film, which is the 199 battle, which doesn't really fill us in too much more except to set up the extra heroes that Bosco has later on. And of course the fact that, as I said, the Zords are destroyed, so they had to contrive a reason to have them in there, which I don't understand why they had to do that. I mean, think about it for a second. Again, the ending of the film is they have to contrive a reason where the people of Earth are wishing to defeat Black Cross. Although I would debate that because it seems the people of Japan, because it takes place in Japan, and if there was a great wish, I'm sure American robots would show up, or Chinese robots or something like that. I know Raptor would wish for Pacific Rim robots to go ahead and show up. The point is they had to contrive a reason that ultimately, actually, when you start digging into it, doesn't make too much sense, when all they could have said was, oh, we have to call on the other robots and stuff. And how awesome would it be to actually get Aka Ranger into his Zord, which is Volbarum? I think that's how you pronounce it. Again, I'm horrible with Japanese words and all that. But what if he actually got into that and rode that into battle, that the cavalry shows up, that the Gokaiger and the Goseiger are fighting as best they can, they can't defeat him, and it's not this contrived reason from the wish of the people, but the Sentai have gotten together and is like, powers be damned, we're going to come in and help you anyway in our Zords. I mean, we do see a number of times in Sentai shows and movies that they can pilot their Zords with the help being morphed. I just watched an episode of Jetman where they couldn't, morph into the Jetman, but they're still in the Icarus with their helmets and their jumpsuits. Why couldn't we have that? I mean, if Guy is still alive and hasn't been sent back up to heaven, why isn't he in Black Condor coming in and just blasting up Black Cross? Or why isn't the Sky Ace coming in piloted by Big One minus his powers? You had the actors, you could have set them down, mocked up a set, or even done extreme close shot to make it seem like they're in a cockpit. That would have at least made more sense, and that would have tied together Super Sentai a little bit more in unity, because you could easily have it where characters distrust Aka Ranger at this point, where they're kind of like, hey, you may have sacrificed our powers, what if they come back, what are we going to do? You can have people that are resentful of that fact. And then, of course, here we are with the Gokaiger in there, and they're like, see, this is what happened, but then, he'd be like, we don't have our powers, that's a shame, I'm sorry I did that, but you know what, we still have our Zords, let's go in there. It may be more dangerous, we don't have our suits to protect us, but we need to stand up for the Earth. I mean, isn't that something I think that we should go ahead and see? And just as another side as well, talking about things that we should be seeing here, where's the roundup scene of all the Sentai? Because something that kind of bugged me in both Gokaiger and Super Megaforce is that all the Rangers just show up together. It's a surprise that they're together, but then you start asking, well, how did they all get together? I've covered this in a previous video because I talked about specifically in the Power Ranger version, why did the RPM Rangers come from another dimension? Why did the Alien Rangers come to Earth? Why did the Time Force Rangers come from the future? All that's left unexplained. Same thing in Sentai. Why did the Flashman come from their home world? Why did the Zoo Ranger come back from heaven? How or why was Rio Melee risen from hell to do this? And why is it that certain characters like Guy is able to be resurrected by the goddess and come back and fight, but Hyde from Gokaiger doesn't come back? A nice roundup scene to build up the threat of the Zanyak, maybe even greater than the way they've been portrayed in the series at this point, should have been something that they thought about doing, and then we could have done more with our past characters. Yes, I know the story is about the Goseiger, the Gokaiger, but if you're not going to focus on them, because again, at this point in the series, they actually said it was not their intention, past Gigaman, to continue to have all these guest characters come in and show up in the show. That was something like, oh, this went over so well, let's keep doing it. Something that Power Rangers obviously did not take note of. So they kept getting those characters in there. So why didn't they take this opportunity when they knew they weren't going to have more characters in the series past the Giga Man episode to say, hey, let's get all the past Rangers in here and let's get them doing something. Let's have two plots going at the same time. We have what the Gokaiger and Gosage are doing, which is honestly not terribly interesting, and then have what the Aka Ranger and Big One are up to. Let's show them gathering the Rangers together. Let's show them being, ascending from heaven or rising from hell or being called from the future or called from another planet and all that. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, folks, that we are not getting. We can only assume that they all got together somehow for reasons that are left unexplained to us. They had giant robot battle, which, sorry, you didn't get to see. Sad day for you. But you know what you get to see? Footage you already saw from the episode, and you get to see Goseiger and Gokaiger fight against each other. Isn't this a great movie? I mean, don't get me wrong, the film did do some good things. There were some interesting things about it. But when you actually start and think about it, and think of all the stuff we didn't see, and things that we should see, and things are far more interesting than what the Ghost Ranger and Gokaiger are doing, then it really bugs you. It bugs me. It certainly does. To think that they didn't think enough of their fans to put that scene in the movie, but instead they wrote it out on a little book and say, here you go. And could you imagine, just as another sign, if we were never told this book in the West, us Americans were never told about it, and that, like, oh, what happened to the Zords, and we have all these questions, and nobody ever thought to tell us about it. It's just a strange thing. I don't know why they focused on I don't know why they focused on what they focused on and why they decided to leave certain things out. Again, you can say it's budget, but I really don't believe that, given, I mean, you had a television show on for 35 years and you don't have a budget to do that, but you're just going to write about it in a book. I mean, come on. Seriously? I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I seriously want to know what you guys think. Do you think, fans of the Onyx Tavern, do you think that we were screwed out of the Mecha Purge, that we did not get to see the more interesting stories being told, that what we saw was less interesting, that was not really worth our time, as much as seeing the past Rangers get together, seeing their Zord battle, and seeing more of them? Because again, that I think that's my ultimate point, is that we did not see the good stuff, and we got the interesting stuff, but not the more interesting stuff. That's what I'm saying, and I would certainly like to know your all's opinion on that. So leave a comment down below. What did you think about the Mecha Purge? What are your overall thoughts on that? So, thank you all again for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.